How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Today I'm going to tell you about what I think will happen to Workhorse before we get the USPS contract and why I think it will actually go up pretty significantly in the short term. I'm going to go through some recent articles. I'm going to talk to you about what I think will happen after the USPS contract. So this is going to be pretty jam-packed. And while a lot of this is speculation and a lot of people don't really like when I speculate on Workhorse, Workhorse is a very speculative stock, so I think it's good to go through different scenarios and what could happen depending on when we get the USPS contract, how much we get, and other factors too. So if you guys like this, please leave a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. It really means a lot. Also, if you want to support the channel in another way and get some free money, check out the link down below to WeBull. Deposit $100, get 3 free stocks. Some of those are worth up to $1,600. I got a $140 stock just a few days ago, so definitely check out that link. So Workhorse is at $19.24. We had their earnings report earlier this week, and we have seen a little bit of an uptrend. So we were down to almost $15 a share, and now we're up about 25%. You can see that over the last month or so, 2 months, we're down. So we are up over $30 a share, and since then, we're down about 37%. And there are a couple reasons for this, but right now, we're getting a lot of mixed news. So first of all, Workhorse announced that they had a new purchase order of 500 C1000 all-electric delivery vans from Pritchard Companies. I covered that in a video before. That's really good news. That came out on the same day as their earnings. It almost seemed like they were holding out for that. And then we have other articles saying that patience is wearing thin. Analysts aren't liking the fact that they aren't able to increase their order deliveries. So they are only at 7 vehicles for last quarter. They went from about 2 or 3 in Q2 to 7 last quarter. And while that is a 300% improvement, that's still not great overall because we were expecting a lot more. They were expecting about 300 to 400 by the end of the year. Now they're not saying that they're still expecting that. And just a couple months ago, even the CFO was on a couple different podcasts and talked to some different creators, and he was still expecting that 300 to 400 units. So I think he knew at that point that wasn't going to happen, but he kept with it until the Q3 earnings report. Now, that is something that I would really like to see improve, but they really have been hit hard by the pandemic and by the virus. They have about 36% of their workforce out with cases right now or potential cases, so they have been hit hard. However, I want to look at what's going to happen over the next few months because I don't think we're going to get a bunch of new numbers on their deliveries and production and stuff like that. I think we're just going to get towards the end of the year and a lot of hype is going to build for the stock. And I'm going to tell you why right here. So if you remember, towards the end of September, we were getting ready for the USPS contract. We were expecting to see it maybe at the end of September. September 28 was a big day for a lot of people. We expected it that day. It was a Monday. And if you remember, a couple days before that, we ran up about 27%. And I realized that I was one of the people that also thought that we might get it then. I said that it might be then, it might be October, it might be end of year. But I was expecting there to be a possibility that we would get it that day. However, that did not materialize, and we saw the stock drop off after that. Then around mid to early October, the Roth Capital Investment Group came out and said that they thought that they were actually going to be able to get the USPS contract early, that they were taking a bullish stance on Workhorse, and there's been a little bit of back and forth whether people thought that they were just trying to pump and dump. But you can remember that came out on a Friday or a Thursday, and then over the weekend the stock went up. It went up a pretty significant amount on that article. 10%, 12% in the first day. And then after we didn't see it materialize, it fell off again all the way down and fell off over the next month. So you can see on one date that we expected the contract, it went up about 27% from its recent low. The next date we saw about 12%. And I know that we've been up a little bit since our bottoms, but I think that's just mostly on this 500 order and the fact that we are getting close to Q3 earnings. A lot of people were buying shares. So I think we could see a nice 10 to 25 to even more than that percent return between now and the end of the year. The reason I think that is this is really the last straw for the USPS contract. I mean, they could push it to next year. They could say, oh, the pandemic pushed us back or something like that. But they've had these different plans from these companies for, I think, since July. So they've had a long time to look over them. They've had a long time to converse with the companies. Almost everyone that is looking at the stock expects it by the end of the year. And I think a lot of people will make plays towards the end of the year. Now, if you're trying to make sense of this, if you're trying to make money on it just before the USPS contract, I think that's kind of dangerous. I mean, you could make a lot of money from it, but we don't know when the USPS will announce. Also, you could see a lot of people, if it starts to run up even 10 or 20%, you could see a lot of people taking profits along the way up. So it might drop back down. So if we see it go from, let's say, $19 a share up to 24 or so, it goes up, about 20% before the end of the year, and maybe it's mid-December, people might start taking profits and getting out of the stock, thinking that there's a chance that we won't get the USPS contract, and that could send the stock back down. So long term, I'm still going to hold on to it until we hear about the USPS contract. Unless we hit $40 a share, then I might start taking some profits, but I don't think that's going to happen. So let's talk about, once we get the USPS contract, what I think we'll actually see. So first of all, I think you have to remember there's a lot of short interest here. About 20% of the company are shares that are shorted. So I think that can cause the stock to go up dramatically in the short term if we get the USPS contract. So let's talk about, first of all, what the likelihood is of getting 100% of the USPS contract. Then I'm going to try to give it a price target, the Workhorse stock itself, based on a price to sales ratio. So again, this is a little bit speculative, but this is just kind of my thoughts on it, my thoughts on the likelihood of this, because I have read about every single article out there on Workhorse and read every single event and made videos on every single event since I picked up the stock about halfway through the summer. So let's take a look. What is the chance that we're going to get 100% of the USPS contract? I think there's only about 1% chance. So they have said many times that they want to split this up between multiple companies. I don't think that Workhorse will get 100%. I just had to put 1% down because, being a numbers guy, I think there's never a 100% chance one way or the other, or a 0% chance. So I'm putting a very low chance that we will get 100% of the contract. If we do, though, I think that will cause the stock to really blow up. I mean, if you're thinking about a short squeeze, I think that will send us very high. And if you're looking at a price to sales ratio of about 20, we would be getting about $1 to $1.2 billion a year in revenue from this contract, which would put us at a price to sales ratio of around 20 if we went up to about a 24 market cap, $24 billion market cap or so, maybe 20-ish. So I think that would send us well above $150 a share. And I don't think this is going to happen. I don't think Workhorse could actually fulfill all these orders. I mean, we've seen them have a difficult time with production just in general. So I think that's not very likely. I think that there's about a 25% chance that we get something in this range from 50 to 99%. Again, I don't think this is super likely. I think it's pretty likely that we might get about 50%. That's where the majority of this 25% is. I think that we could get 50%. The CFO has led us to believe a couple times with some of his statements and reading between some of the lines that he thinks that we could get up to production numbers that would signify about 50% of the USPS contract. So with about 50% of the USPS contract, we could expect about $600 million a year in revenue, and that would be over 5 or 6 years. With a price to sales ratio of about 15, that would send the market cap up to about $9 billion or so, which would essentially triple or quadruple our target price or our share price. So I think that would push us maybe around $60 a share, maybe up to $80, somewhere in that range. But I could definitely see that happening, at least the short term. I think then it will start to pull back and people will start to sell off because it is such a big spike. But I think initially we could see a massive movement. Now, what is the likelihood that I see 25 to 49%? I'd say that's about 40%. So I think we will get about 25 to 33% of the contract. I think that's a pretty solid guess from everything that I've seen. If we have a price to sales ratio of 10 and we're getting about $300 million a year, because we get, let's say, a third of the contract, that's about 300 to 400 million a year in revenue from that. That means that would push our price up to about $3 billion, about $4 billion overall, which would send us to about a $30 to $40 price per share. I think that's pretty likely. I mean, I think that is really my thesis for what will happen if I had to put a guess out there. Now, was the chance of 1 to 24%? Well, I think that that's about a 25% chance. So I could see us getting maybe 20% of the USPS contract just because we don't have a lot of production out there. I'm not even going to try to give a price to sales ratio because I think that we'll still increase our price if we get about 20 to 25% of the contract. I think that it would send us up a little bit, maybe to $25, $26 a share, at least short term. And then maybe it will fall a little bit once people realize that there is a long way to go. But I think that that is somewhat likely also. And then 0% chance, I think that there's maybe a 5 to 10% likelihood of this happening. Again, I don't think this is likely, so don't get me wrong, I don't think this is likely, but I could see it happening. It's a very speculative stock. And I think if we don't get that contract, if we don't get any of the USPS contract, the price will drop significantly. I think it will fall about 60%. I've said this the whole time. I think it will fall to about $8 a share. Some people will buy back in long term, but I could see it falling down maybe even a little bit more than that initially, and then falling back up to maybe $5 to $8 a share. Now, again, I think that we are going to get the USPS contract, just to be clear. I just don't know when, and I'm not trying to make any type of earnings play, any type of USPS decision play. I'm just going to be happy to sit here and wait towards the end of the year. So let me know your thoughts below. Again, this is pretty speculative, but I think it's good to go over different scenarios. Let me know what you think Workhorse will go up to. Also, if you want to see another video on SPCE stock, which is another growth stock, I did one just this morning, and the stock is up pretty big today, so definitely check that out. See if that is a stock that you're interested in.